Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the fourth album from White Lung, called Paradise. So I don't tend to review a lot of punk music. I mean, I will on occasion. If there's something that really jumps out at me with sharp hooks or particularly nuanced lyrics, I'll get all over that. But I think it's fair to say that of the punk scene that's really left in the 2010s, there's not a lot that I've heard that really works for me or jumps off the page. And it's not saying that I dislike the genre, I don't know my own personal favorites, I definitely do. But maybe it's just a factor of overexposure or looking for acts that are saying or doing something that's a little bit different. Punk by definition went back to the basics. When you have nearly 40 years of the basics instrumentally, you need to do something in order to stand out, at least for me. As such, I've been a little bit reticent to talk about White Lung, a Canadian punk act from Vancouver who incidentally don't consider themselves punks, known for blisteringly fast hardcore riffing and frontwoman Mishway's raw, explosively feminist lyrics. Up till now, they've released 3 records that might generously have just over an hour of material, but they managed to capture a lot of potent content that updates the Riot Girl ethos for the modern era. And while I won't always say I love their albums, I'm not the biggest hardcore fan, I've liked what I've heard in terms of their progression towards a fuller sound and stronger hooks. And lyrics have always been well framed and explosively raw in a perfect pussy sort of way, and I can respect that. So I was definitely curious to check out their newest album, Paradise, which wasn't just their longest album to date, nearly a half hour, but also featured new production from Lars Stolfers, most well known for his association with the Mars Volta, the Cold War Kids, and Matt and Kim. At the very least, this promised to be a prettier affair than previous albums, but if that meant a shift towards more defined melodic hooks, that could be a really good thing, at least for me. So I picked up Paradise. What'd I find? Well, folks, this album is designed to piss people off. And no, I'm not just talking about the change in sound, but in content as well. Where White Lung's previous records had a strong Riot Girl feminist undertone, this record takes many of the underlying ideas and pushes them into uncomfortable extremes that seem designed to piss off feminists and everyone else against their prettiest production yet. And yet there's a part of me that really likes this album. The sort of naked transgressive art that can actually land impact and is smart enough to ask well-framed but difficult questions. In other words, I'm a little bit surprised there haven't been more think pieces on this album, beyond the critical acclaim and the reviews, because this is a record that deserves a lot of discussion beyond just being one of the band's catchiest and most diverse collections of songs to date. It's a great record, but it deserves a lot more conversation than is currently being had. So let's start off with the element that will piss punks off the most right out of the gate, the evolution in sound. Already there have been fans who have turned on this album saying it's way too pop, and yeah, I can see some of that. The riffing is slower, the guitar leads are brighter courtesy of the thicker effects. Frontwoman Mishway is singing in a husky, Courtney Love-esque voice that's multi-tracked more heavily and a stronger emphasis on hooks. But let's get real here, this is still a lot heavier than even the pop punk and emo of the mid-2000s. And for that, you need to thank 2 people. Drummer Anna Marie Vassalou, who brings in some borderline blast beat drumming to keep up with the momentum, and guitarist Kenneth William, who brings in some of the most riotous but tightly written and melodic guitar work that White Lung has ever had. The hooks have only gotten better since Deep Fantasy, and the wide array of guitar tones and playing gives this album a lot of color, including some tremolo picking that wouldn't be out of place on a more atmospheric black metal album. And this record can maintain that layered atmosphere for some killer songs, even if I do feel some of the transitions between the chunkier metalcore-esque riffing and the brighter tones don't always click, with probably the biggest example being the choppy track Vegas. And even there, I'm not so much faulting the composition so much as the production, as there's definitely some tones that feel a little bit too thin, namely that very shrill, wheedling piece on the solo of Kiss Me When I Bleed or on I Beg You. And hell, if you like the nastier, more hardcore side of White Lung, you do get some tracks in that vein, like the more jagged riffs of the title track or the more compressed side of Demented. But on the flip side, I actually like both Hungry and Below. Yeah, they wouldn't feel out of place on rock radio in 2006, where the tremolo riffing balances out against the thicker drums and the wiry bass. It's a great fit, and there is bite to these songs. Hell, go for tracks like Narcoleptic and Dead Weight and Sister. The riffs are definitely there, but there's melody that can complement the frenetic energy, and it actually sticks in my brain, which I normally can't say about a lot of hardcore punk. And a big part of this is Mishway's vocals, where the multi-tracking has been cranked up significantly, so she's got even a more prominent presence, even if she's not screaming like she's done so in the past. And you know, not coming from a hardcore background, I don't mind her choice to go for a more melodic sound. It's still vicious and raw, just not quite as in your face, and yeah, it is a little bit prettier. And while everyone and their mother can make the whole comparison, I'd actually argue it's a comparison that underscores some of the album's themes. But before we get to that, there's one thing that I want to mention that's irrelevant here is Mishway's peculiar admiration for, of anybody else Lana Del Rey. Now, you all know my opinion on Lana Del Rey by this point, having covered 2 of her mediocre albums of Ultraviolence and Honeymoon, and you would think that Mishway, having written the sort of firebrand feminist punk records, that she'd take some issue with Lana Del Rey. But I bring this up because on a thematic level, this record has a surprising amount in common with Lana Del Rey's work, in that it focuses on women, and feminists in particular, who judge other women, placing their own context on female work. And I say Mishway goes even further than most of Lana Del Rey's submissive transgression. Songs like Demented and Sister place her in the mind of female serial killers like Rosemary West and Karla Homolka, digging into why they have helped their husbands rape and murder. And it goes even beyond that. All throughout this album, there are examples of women turning on women in judgment, like on Kiss Me When I Bleed, where Mishway walks through a riches to rags story in vivid detail, or on Vegas, where it seems like a party of women turn on one of their beautiful friends to beat her and rob her, or on Narcoleptic, which could very well be an impressionist mess, but still has notes of imbibing toxins and casting aside an elitist community who would thrash her for charting her own path outside of their very narrow ideals. And that community could well be punks judging this record for betraying the sound, or feminists who are scandalized by the extreme content and lack of moralizing. But Mishway also takes time to highlight other places where that judgment will come down. The woman who had a miscarriage on dead weight and is scared to have sex and get pregnant again, pissed off with the pity. Or on Below, highlighting how female beauty does have value, and there's a certain tragedy in its loss. Or on Hungry, a song delving into the self-consuming nature of that thirst for fame. And throughout every single one of these songs, you get the feeling that Mishway's turning to the audience with a sneer that says, "Judge me. I fucking dare you." Now, on some level, that's transgressive, and that's punk as hell, but it's also very reminiscent of Courtney Love and Lana Del Rey. But the big difference comes in the framing. What's always pissed me off about Lana Del Rey is that despite the melodrama of her writing, she tries to frame many of these songs as romantic and dramatic, even if she does have some self-awareness, or at least doesn't tilt towards the soap opera bombast that can make the transgressive nature tolerable on a heightened emotional level. But while much of Paradise falls straight into that same melodrama, even despite the prettier guitar work, Mishway doesn't shy away from framing these songs in the writing with ugly, rough-edged tones that show a lot of self-awareness. She's not asking for sympathy so much as she's provoking a reaction with her words. And believe me, I got no problem with her stripping out the moralistic, self-flagellating judgment out of modern feminist discourse. Hell, oftentimes movements like feminism can feel like their own worst enemies. But where I think that the record might stumble a little bit is in its end goal. The album ends with the title track and her taking off with her husband to ride off into the sunset and have sex. And there's a certain poignancy in that sort of ending. I get why she did it, but compared to some of the more graphic scenes and emotions on this album, it can feel a little bit slight, not quite have the same intensity to really end this album with a bang. But despite that, I really like Paradise. The hooks are better than ever, the guitar work is awesome, and I really admire the courage to take an incisive and critical look at modern feminist discourse and push it into some uncomfortable but necessary territory, asking those tough questions. As I said, this is a record that should inspire some fearsome debate, but at the end of the day, the music is strong enough to hold up regardless. So for me, it's a light 8 out of 10 and definitely a recommendation. Although I will say, if you fall towards the more socially aware side of the internet, this record will get under your skin. And it should. Outside of that, if you've been waiting for a White Lung to make a more accessible record outside their hardcore material, this is definitely what you're going to be looking for. So yeah, check this out. It's pretty damn great. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I got the poll up there, so you guys tell me what you think, but really, this is the sort of album that demands conversation in the comments. So did you guys think that the feminist themes delving into that managed to come together in a way that was interesting or provocative? Do you think the provocation actually worked? I'm really curious at what you guys think here. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming up that you want me to take a look at, I will try to give them a listen. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.